All right, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Two Brothers Politics. I am John, and we got a bunch of stories to get into today. We're going to talk about the debt ceiling, possibly, probably going up, some contested territory in Ukraine and Russia. We've got a what was it, $1.6 million in fines for 17 felonies for Donald Trump, which is we'll see what happens with that. And lastly, a little bit of Ezra Miller news. Looks like he got probation for breaking and entering.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun. We also have the White House press briefing that we're going to be diving into. We're going to be diving everything that Jean-Pierre has said about Biden, about Desantis. There's actually a couple of clips that we're going to be getting into. So all that stuff's going to be vital. We're going to find out exactly what President Biden is saying about the documents. All of these things are going to be covered inside of the press conference. So make sure you guys stay tuned.
Okay, as this
All
week comes
right.
to a close, I want to take a moment to highlight the incredible progress the president has made for the American people in recent days, from expanding affordable health care to lowering costs and tackling inflation to bringing manufacturing and jobs back to our shores. President Biden started the week at the North American Leaders Summit in Mexico City, where he spoke for 2-hour close cooperation with Mexico and Canada to address shared challenges that impact the American people. Challenges like combating climate change, COVID-19 pandemic, and transnational criminal organizations that are trafficking and smuggling people, as well as illicit drugs like fentanyl. The president spoke to our work to take thousands of smugglers off the streets, catch record levels of fentanyl before it even reaches our border, strengthen border security, and increase resources for border communities all over the opposition of Republican governors and Republican members of Congress, I might add. We've also continued taking action to lower health care costs for American families, made possible by President Biden and congressional Democrats' enactment of the Inflation Reduction Act. On Wednesday, HHS announced its historic plans for Medicare to directly negotiate lower prescription drug costs. In addition, starting this month, seniors on Medicare are seeing their insulin costs capped at $35 for a month's supply. They are also now able to get recommended vaccines for free. All of this thanks to, again, the Inflation Reduction Act. HHS also announced record-breaking enrollment number of healthcare coverage on the Affordable Health Care Act marketplace. Nearly 16 million people have signed up for this open enrollment period for healthcare coverage, a 13% increase from last year. And it includes over 3 million people who are brand new to the marketplace, and we're not even done with the open enrollment yet. Because of the cost savings measure in the Inflation Reduction Act that President Biden signed into law, millions of Americans are continuing to save $800 per year on health insurance on average. And 4 out of the 5 healthcare.gov enrollees can find coverage for $10 or less a month. All of this adds up to real impact and meaningful progress to expand affordable, quality health care coverage for American families. And that matters. That matters to the American people. We also had exciting news on the economic front as well. On Wednesday, as you all saw, the largest solar investment in U.S. history, a direct result of the president's economic plan and the Inflation Reduction Act again. This $2.5 billion investment in Georgia will create 2,500 jobs.
All right. So
Okay.
I wanted to start us off on kind of a happy note. You know what I mean? So many people ask, what has Joe Biden done for you? What has he done? What has he done? What has he done? Now, all of these things he has done. You could argue the Inflation Reduction Act has its problems, but at the end of the day, all of these things are actively happening, and they are because of the policies that Joe Biden has been pushing. Now, with that being said, by the time we get to the end of the segment, I feel like there was an ulterior motive on why Jean-Pierre came out and just dumped everything good that they've been doing. And I think it directly has to link with the classified documents. And I think it's a way of deflecting everything off of that, because in the press conference, everybody had questions about that. And she continuously is like, I'm just going to defer you to this office, or I'm going to defer you to the Department of Justice. Like, we're not going to make comments on that. Like, and the problem is, like, all of these people have called those offices and they have not gotten the answers that they are looking for. That's why they asked the White House or the press secretary, what's going on? Like, what's Joe Biden's thoughts on this? What's your thoughts on this? Did you guys have previous knowledge of this going into it? Did you know that there was going to be a special investigation ongoing? And the question is, I'm going to defer you to somebody else's office. I'm going to defer you. So, and I think she knew that. They knew that. The administration, they knew this going into the press conference today, that this was going to be a topic of discussion. And so she, right off the bat, was like, you know what? Let's list everything good that Joe Biden has done in the last 2 years. And this might help people not worry about the classified documents as much.
I think that we got to be able to count good when it happens, but I don't think that, she's talking about Republican opposition to fentanyl being on the streets. I don't know a single Republican that's fighting against trying to get fentanyl off the streets, but as long as the fight is there to get fentanyl off the streets, I can agree with that. However, we did have fentanyl coming in through the southern border. Even prior to Biden becoming president. But I don't think that him being president has made that situation better, having practically an open border policy.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that he wants to clean it up, but realize as well that he is part of, or his administration is part of the problem.
I don't, I disagree with that. I don't think that there's an open border policy. Biden is even now coming out and making sure that he says every time he's talking about immigration to stay in your country and do it legally. I don't, like, the border is not open. People are still getting turned around. Title 42 is still a thing. I don't even understand. Like, one day they want it, one day they don't. They don't. Like, the Republicans don't want it, but they do want it, and it like.
Well, I think that they want to keep Title 42 in place because COVID's not done. We keep getting told that it's yeah.
Explain what it is.
So Title 42 essentially allows for the government to turn away a citizen at the border because it could be harmful to its citizens because of COVID, because of the pandemic.
Contagious pathogen, not necessarily COVID specifically, but any pathogen that they deem could spread to Americans.
Right. And so if we take Title 42 away, then we're essentially saying that we have no room to deny a person or persons coming across the border, because if Title 42 isn't there, that would mean that the pandemic is over.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why, there's a fight to try and keep that in place, because I see it on both sides that we want to, it's on one day, it's not on the next day, and at this point it's not really a daily thing anymore. It's more of just like 1 month versus the next month, or weeks at a time. But I think though that we don't technically on paper have open borders, but I do think that the waves have already been created. We got caravan after caravan after caravan of people that were just showing up to the border, tens of thousands of people sitting underneath a bridge in El Paso for days and days at a time waiting for processing. And some people get turned away, but a lot of people are getting put on buses or planes and shipped all across the country, and they're staying here in the country. And then we're going to say, okay, well, maybe we vetted them. Hopefully we vetted them, at least the majority. The ones that we caught didn't have fentanyl, but the fentanyl is coming from somewhere.
So this is a good segue into the next clip I have prepared.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull it up now. I think it's only about a minute long.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alex, in the back.
Yeah, Karine, earlier this week we discussed the situation in Florida with, I think, about 350 Cuban migrants landing at Dry Tortuga and Key West. I believe you said it was a political ploy on the part of Governor Desantis to deploy the National Guard. His office has said that the Coast Guard requested help patrolling the waters off Florida. So can you just kind of discuss your understanding of the situation in Florida and how that understanding has developed in the last several days?
And I'm happy to repeat what I said, which is Governor DeSantis has made a mockery of the system, and he has consistently and constantly, as many of you have reported, has done political stunts, has not helped to address the issue, but has instead decided to put the lives of migrants who are coming here for a better life at risk, and that's what we have seen from this governor. Look, when it comes to the Coast Guard and Customs and Border Protection, they are deploying additional personnel and resources to Florida to quickly process individuals and place them in removal proceedings. I would note that the migrants from Cuba who arrived in Florida over a week ago were processed and moved out of the state by Border Patrol within days.
Okay.
So I have to say there that entire time, there we are. That entire time there, she actually did not look at all. Whoops, wrong thing, I think.
Hold on.
She didn't look at all or she didn't flip through her book. She was looking at the same piece of paper the entire time. I'm not saying that it was scripted or the question was scripted. I'm saying that it was.
She said that same thing yesterday.
Yeah.
She said that same thing yesterday. DeSantis had fired back at her, and so it was brought up again. It was just brought up again today, and she was reiterating the same thing that she said previously.
But I don't think that he has made a mockery. It is his duty as the governor of that state to be able to defend his state from whatever comes through, foreign or domestic.
I do think that he is doing what is necessary.
As a governor.
I do not believe that you should be shipping them to other locations as a political stunt.
No, I do agree with that. Yeah.
I think you're using human beings as your political playthings to prove a point. And we get the point. Like,
quite literally pawns.
We're in South Texas. We understand fully, what immigration, how it impacts and things of that nature. So I understand where he's coming from, but you're taking it too far.
Right.
Like, that's just too much.
Now, even as a conservative myself, I do believe that if somebody wants to immigrate into our country, or if I want to immigrate to somebody else's country, I've got absolutely no issue with that. As long as you take residence in the country, you're going to become a productive member of their society. You don't necessarily have to get along with their culture, but at least respect their culture. If there is no culture, then at least try to be active in their society. And I mean, you could be a mole rat living in your house for the rest of your life too, but at least contribute to the society that you live into. So I've got no issue with people migrating, but I do think that there is a way of doing it, a legal way of doing it. And I think that this administration has just kind of let the reins go on that. And for the past 2 years, we have just been, it's like one day was, hey, let's go too far and let's just build this wall so that way nobody comes in, to the next day the literal opposite. Like, there's no compromise. It's one or the other.
I think DeSantis is running for president.
I think
him running for president, this is where it begins. He's building the foundation that he is going to run hard on immigration. That his immigration policies is going to be hugely what he focused. Excuse me. As we can see here, we have, hundreds of mostly Cuban migrants arriving by boat in South Florida, increasing long tensions between the GOP and the governor and Biden. I apologize. And we're just seeing that, like I said, we're seeing the tension grow. We're seeing him really build up his platform on what he's going to run on. And he says that the National Guard asked him to call these people in, which is very plausible. regardless, I think having the National Guard come in for 350 people is a little bit excessive. Like there's not a lot going on here. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I mean, it's a show of force,
And
right?
that's what I think.
There was that movie Ender's Game. I don't know if
Yes.
anybody ever watched it, but the ending to it was actually kind of interesting. But the whole theory behind that was to end the war before it ever began. And I don't think that 350 people coming over the border is by any means a war. But if he's showing that kind of force, then it's to help deter a bigger wave coming the next time.
Maybe. But people are going to do it. Like, it's never going to stop people from coming. That's the
No.
thing. Like, we can put,
Right.
and that's another thing I was actually going to bring up is that, they're
People
wanting
will argue a
they're
wall.
no. They're wanting to push through 87,000 IRS agents,
Right.
which, and they say that they're going to be focusing on the rich and stuff like that. But I truly don't believe that that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be people like you and me that are going to be
The
getting
legislation
tax
was
audited for
$600 transactions.
Yeah, well, that actually got delayed. It got pushed back, at least for now. So
Right.
that's a good thing because people
Right.
that have Macari or eBay or anything like that, aren't having to worry about that, which I thought was absolutely dumb. Especially, I got
Yeah.
these.
It doesn't need to get pushed back. It needs to get abolished.
I got these little Funko Pops that I buy and sell on freaking Macari. And it was like, oh, well, I need to start paying taxes on the toys that I'm buying that I've already paid taxes on. The other person paid taxes on them.
Right.
And now you're wanting me to pay tax again because I decided to resell them and maybe even lose money on the deal.
Right.
Like, what? How is that right? How does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, taxation is theft. I'll say it every single time, every single day.
I don't think it's theft. I just think that it's over taxation. That's too much. It's too much, especially on the little guy, on the small businesses and so on and so forth. Also, weed dealers don't like it. They can't use Cash App anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. So we're going to jump into the last clip that I have from Jean-Pierre. And it's going into kind of Biden's more or less response to classified documents or we could say the lack of response. Let's check it out.
Times today referred people to the White House counsel for questions about the process and the review. Would you bring Richard Sauber here or someone from his team to answer these questions in the briefing room in a formal capacity?
So look, the White House counsel's office has provided information on this this week as appropriate. Again, I think I just said this, I've said this multiple times during this briefing, that I know in the last 24 hours, my colleagues at the White House Counsel White House Counsel's office has been in touch with many of you and has answered a lot of your questions. And so that will continue. You reach out to them and they will certainly engage. And so I'm going to leave it there. But
all right.
Okay.
So I wanted to share that because the entire press conference, everybody was asking about the classified documents.
Constantly.
She continuously was referring them to an outside organization that wasn't there at the time to answer the questions.
Right. DOJ.
And DOJ and the other committee, I can't remember what it was.
Right.
But regardless, they were asking, can you bring one of those individuals here so that we can ask them in front of the cameras right now in person? And they're like, well, I don't know. It's because when the reporters are calling them, they're not getting the answers they want. So why not put them in front of a camera? And now we can get our answers. Now we can figure out exactly what is going on in this situation. And they're actively avoiding, and they're probably smart. Like with everything going on, especially with him being caught with these materials in his private library, in his garage, after everything that they have said about Trump, it's just like, God, man, like you have to shut up at this point. You have to shut and that's the thing they're playing on. They're playing on the fact that they are shutting up and they are complying, as they say. We're complying with it. Trump didn't comply with it. He wasn't complying with it. He said he wasn't going to hand them over. We we are complying. We're your friend.
Right.
We didn't know about these. It's just an honest mistake. And now, as soon as we learned about it, we handed it over 2 months after the fact, once it was reported on the news. Then it
Right.
became something, because they even asked in the press conference, would you have let the public know about this? And how long did you guys know about it prior to it being dropped on the news? And the answer is, I'm going to defer you to the DOJ. I'm
Right.
going to defer you to these individuals that I know you have spoken to. She even said, she's like, the people I am looking at, they spoke to them. I know you guys have spoke to them today. They have answered all the questions. Obviously, they didn't answer the questions if they're sitting here asking you for the questions. Now, this could just be a reporter trying to get her to admit that the Biden administration, whatever the case may
Right.
be, admitting to whatever they want them to admit to. But I don't think that's the case. I think she is trying to deflect as much as possible. And
I do think so.
I think that they're just hoping that they can push this under the rug. And like I showed in the beginning of this video, they named everything good that Biden has done, which I applaud 1,000 times over. Some of that stuff is absolutely amazing, especially caps on insulin and stuff of that nature. We have many diabetics in our family, so we know that that's going to be extremely beneficial for them. Definitely, that's the kind of stuff that I vote Democrat for. Now, it's all just a distraction, though, because at the end of the day, you're deflecting and you're not answering the questions. You don't want to be held liable in any way, shape, or form. You guys are hoping that you guys can just move past this and ignore it. And like I said yesterday, I want to ignore this. I want it to essentially go away because I know nothing is going to come of it. I know, regardless, even if Biden never got caught, I believe that Trump, his stuff would have went away. So that would have been nothing. They definitely, Democrats would have ran on it. They would have been like, he has classified documents, nuclear weapons. They're all going to die. But now that Biden has been caught with it, it's an entire different story. Now it's like, okay, it's like,
that's the complete issue.
I kind of messed up, buddy. It happens. It happens, buddy.
That is kind of the entire issue, is that there's a complete bias here, because if Biden had these documents as vice president and he had no authorization to declassify them, then
now
I
did see something that says that
okay,
a classified document. I was watching Tin Pool actually on this. You know how I like to watch people I don't agree with. I was watching Tin Pool, and they were talking about there was something very vague about a classified document can become declassified by the person that classified it or a supervisor official or officer or something of that nature. So the question then is, was he the one that classified it, and or can a vice president be considered the supervisor officer or whatever it was?
Okay. I have to say
because
that
then the situation is exactly the same.
we need to know what the documents are.
And we're never going to know.
We're never
going to know.
We are never going to know. We need to have a full investigation into it, because even if that be the case, then we need to make sure, just for everybody's clarity. And if that's the case, then the same thing needs to be treated to Trump as well. It's the hypocrisy that lies within the mainstream media, where they'll completely demonize the right, and they put everybody on the left up on a pedestal, or like you said, they're pushing this completely under the rug. In 2 weeks, this isn't even going to be talked about anymore. We're never going to know what happened to it, and whatever malfeasance actually went on, they'll just simply get away with it.
You know what's going to happen? Andrew Tate's going to be let out of jail, and he's going to reveal that we're all actually in the Matrix.
I read today that he's on a 30-day hold. Romanian police.
Yeah, it was actually I read that. Yeah, he's on a 30-day hold. But Romania. So the way it works is they can hold you for an X amount of time, and then the judge has to make a judgment on whether to hold you for 30 days or to let you go. So he decided, with whatever evidence was brought before him, that he decided that, and I don't know how Romanian courts work. It could be a completely biased and a completely corrupt system for all I know. But they have 30 days to figure out whatever they're going to do. And then once they figure it out, we'll finally know something. But they keep seizing his vehicles. Now, they could be doing this just so they can cash in on those cars, or they could be doing this because there might be something in those that requires some kind of evidence. We've had individuals come forward already saying that they were abused by him. We've had other individuals come out and say that they weren't abused by him, but they just like kinky stuff.
Right.
Regardless, like, I don't really like talking about the guy, but he's made such a relevant impact in culture right now because of his stance on masculinity and everything else. You know, people like to ignore his misogynistic ways because he has a message. Like, I always hear, that is always what I hear, is that yes, he is misogynistic, but he has a good message. Like, I don't care. There's lots of
Right.
people that have that good message. I would argue that Joe Rogan, you know, a lot of people Democratic wise may not agree with me, but I think Joe Rogan is a great voice. He supports trans people, he supports gay people, he's, you know, about legalization, he's about small government. He's an individual that will hear anybody out. He is one individual that tells you everything that Andrew Tate would without the misogyny.
Fair
And
enough.
so
Yeah.
I'm saying, if we're going to have role models, why not pick better role models and not make excuses for the really bad ones?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, he's according to him and according to his followers, a lot of people say that, you know, Andrew Tate saved his life. And I can say, okay, well, that's great. You know, I would say the same thing about somebody like Jordan Peterson.
I would say the
You know,
same thing about someone that goes to Jesus, even though I'm an atheist.
right,
I'm glad it saved your life. That's
right.
fantastic. But I can promise you that if we put something else besides Jesus or Andrew Tate to fill that gap that you have missing, you could have still had your life saved.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. A better role model.
Yeah.
Definitely a better role model. And speaking of role models, and world role models right now, what is happening between Russia and Ukraine? Looks like we've got some debate on who is controlling. What's the city called? Is it in the Donetsk area?
Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to bring up the article.
Okay.
There we go. Ukraine war live updates. Kyiv denies Russia's claim of control over contested Soledar. Ukraine set to receive more Western tanks. This is being reported by CNBC as of 5:44 p.m. today. Russia said it now controls the eastern Ukraine town of Soledar in the Donetsk region. Or town or country, I'm not sure. I'd have to actually look at it out because I don't know
It's
enough about Ukraine.
it's in the Donbass area, and it's kind of the equivalent to like a state
So like a
for.
territory or state.
Yeah, it's like a
Okay.
territory within that portion of the country. So the Donbass area is like the equivalent of the Louisiana River coming straight up through, right? It splits the country in about a third, and
Okay.
the Donbass area cuts that into a third, and then within that area is Donetsk, which is a territory within inside.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so
It's
they have
closer to Russia. It's
after
borders Russia.
after months of fighting, a claim that the Ukraine has denied. One Russia-appointed officials previously said pockets of resistance of Ukrainian troops still remain, as Kyiv insisted as recently as Friday afternoon that its forces were still holding out.
Right.
And so this is a problem because we have been getting conflicting reports from both Russia and Zelensky.
Hmm.
Zelensky has been actively saying that they are winning this battle, that the city is still theirs. But then we have the Kremlin coming out and saying its forces have taken the city.
Right.
We have, hold on, I'm going to show you guys a photo real quick. We got a bunch of different photos of rescue relief and stuff of that nature. But one I wanted to
both
show you.
both sides have admitted to propaganda from the very beginning. Both sides
Yes.
have admitted to propaganda. Russia and unfortunately, this is a NATO proxy war. This is not just Ukraine anymore. We as Americans, our taxpayer money is being voted on and sent to Ukraine in the form of defensive weapons. And although I may agree with defending a country, I don't think that we should be defending a corrupt country such as Ukraine. I
Yeah.
don't agree with Russia. I don't agree with Russia, and I don't think that they should be invading. And this is one of those bipartisan lines here where it's like if if you're against Ukraine being funded, automatically you're a Putin supporter, and that is absolutely further from the truth than anything, because you don't have to agree with Putin, but also at the same time you don't have to agree with my taxpayer money going to a pointless war that we're just getting into after we left Afghanistan completely botched.
No, yeah, I agree 100% with you. So before I get into that, I do want to show this is a photo recently of a satellite imagery of a bombed out apartment buildings inside the city. So we're seeing a small brief look at the absolute destruction that this war is
Yeah, it's
really taking
humbled.
on Ukraine. It's actually it's horrible, you know. So to get to your point, I know I've said it multiple times. I am extremely anti-war, especially after
Mhm.
being in Iraq and seeing what our country did over there, and how it destabilized the entire region, and how it just wasn't beneficial for any of the parties involved except for the rich people like Halliburton and things of that nature. I actually have a buddy who didn't even know about Halliburton being stateside. Like, he
Mhm.
thought it was something that had to do with weapons and stuff because he saw Halliburton so much when we were in Iraq,
Right.
not realizing that Halliburton's like got their hands in so many different things.
As well as BlackRock, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of things that I disagree with. And so, you know, after my experience, I've become very anti-war, and that
So
includes Ukraine, that includes Russia. I think that this needs to be a European issue. I think that the European countries need to come together. They need to do something
yeah.
about it. They want to, if they're so worried about Russian aggression and then pushing past Ukraine into other regions like Poland and such, then I believe that they need to come together and they need to be the ground to stand against. And
So
if we have to interfere, we will, but that's only after a war has kicked off and everything is fully
yeah.
ongoing.
I
And
I hate to wait that long, but I think
and
it'd be necessary.
and the only way I would be okay with intervention in versus, I don't even like proxy war, which we're doing right now.
Right.
By supplying them with weaponry, we're essentially at war without throwing bodies at it.
Yep.
I The only way I would be okay with it is if it threatened our own national security.
Mhm.
If there was, for some reason, we believe that Russia was in fact going to attack the United States, and we had this with 100% certainty,
Mhm.
then I would be saying, okay, sign me up. I'll go over there.
Well, you can actually volunteer as a citizen, as an American citizen. You can volunteer to be sent over just as a civilian to be able to fight for the Ukrainian side.
Yeah, people
And
are doing that in Yemen and everything else too for a
I
while.
I don't necessarily agree nor disagree, to each his own. How can I force another individual to make the same decisions that I would make morally or virtuously? If you want to go and defend another country, then I might not agree with you, but you have the ability to do that. And I
Mhm.
don't think that anybody should necessarily stop you. Now, if it were on the other side, an act of aggression and invading another person's country, then I I do think, yeah, we should not be supporting that. But we're
Mhm.
on the defensive side, or at least Ukraine is. But I really wanted to ask you, what do you think of like this becoming a long-term insurgency? As a veteran yourself, we were told from the very beginning that Russia was going to end up withdrawing within like 2 weeks to 2 months. And here we are going into a year of Russia having invaded, close to a year now to Russia having invaded in Ukraine. And this thing is still going completely strong. It's still like the main topic on, the weekly news at least once a week. And it doesn't seem like this is ever going to really slow down. I feel like this is going to end up being like the Middle East all over again, where it's just going to last for 20, 30 years.
Um,
It's
I
either
think
that or it
I
gets
think I would
worse and
refer
turns into
to
world war.
I think I would refer to the geopolitical strategist. His name is Peter Zane,
Okay.
Zeihan. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right.
Mhm.
But he was on Joe Rogan. He had a segment on there, and then he's a geopolitical strategist. So
Okay.
he's very intertwined with understanding national conflicts and everything going on with Ukraine versus Russia and so on and so forth. And from what he's saying is that we haven't seen the last of it, at least just yet.
Right.
So what he's expecting to happen is that the weaponry that Ukraine is receiving from us currently, This is going to give them the necessary aspects to be able to defend themselves, but we're going to see the Kremlin throwing more bodies at this. At least we're talking
So
like maybe like another 500,000 people, because he was saying like that's how that
yes,
is how Russia solved their conflicts.
right.
Is they throw the body if they don't have the manufacturing, if they don't have the bullets, they're gonna throw two guys, one carries the rounds, one carries the gun, go out there. Whoever
Mhm.
survives, survives. If you don't survive, you
So
serve the motherhood or
one
motherland.
one of the issues that I have actually is going to be a quote from Matt Gaetz. He was on Timcast tonight, actually, prior to this recording, and I think that I'll have that clip for you tomorrow. But he's saying that he doesn't believe that we actually know where our equipment is going. We're sending all of these weapons into Ukraine, into a corrupt country, and yet none of it is actually being accounted for. We don't know where any of this equipment is actually ending up. And so I have an issue with us sending weapons to Ukraine and then in turn Russia getting those weapons, in a similar or a different fashion in the same way that the Middle East ended up getting our weapons from Afghanistan. Um, and then Russia turning around and using it on us eventually. And now we see that Russia is, hand in hand with China, or at least it seems like their relationship is closing in on itself. And so I worry that
Well,
our
that's the
US taxpayer money is
thing.
going to fund a world war that will eventually come down on us. I'm not saying
so
world war is happening, but
so
remember how World War II happened, and it was a series of dominoes that fell, and we may just be at the starting of what is to become World War III.
so maybe um as the strategist had put it, he sees that it's more than likely we're gonna see the fall of Russia in the next 40 years.
Okay.
That they're no longer gonna have the resources or the farmland
Hmm.
to properly be able to feed their population, and we are gonna see an entire governmental collapse from its currency to from its economic status all the way down to being able to get grain from one place to another. Um,
Do
from
you
my
think that maybe that's why they're wanting to invade Ukraine for
Yes,
farmland?
yes,
Do you
100%.
think do you think that it's territory,
Yes,
resources, or
I
is it
think it's
something that is more
I think it's a little bit of both. I think
principle?
because um, if the information that he said is correct, I'm assuming he is correct because he's highly knowledgeable on
Hmm.
with these subjects and he's been studying it. He works with the Defense Department. He does all these things. And I'm sure we can fact check all that stuff at a later time, especially if we're going to talk more about him, which I would like to.
Yeah.
So we can dive more into who he is and where he comes from and what his background is. But I think it's a move for them. It's a last ditch effort. We need the
Okay.
extra farmland. We need the soil, the good climate. We need all of these things to be able
Hmm.
to help, because at one point in time, this area was a thriving area for Russia.
Hmm.
And, especially with its farmland.
Yeah,
It was a
they
huge
don't agree
supply.
with letting it go. They
Of
after the
course they
Cold War,
don't.
they wanted to hold on to it. Yeah.
Because
And
it was hugely beneficial to the entire country. It's like a region. It's like taking out middle America, you
I
know?
think I think we're gonna have to do an entire segment on the Russia Ukraine thing because there's a whole lot of things to talk about here.
Yes.
There's we could do an entire hour just on this.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think that this is going to be the end of it. I do worry that Russia's going to end up
If his if his
consuming the
if his es-
land.
if his estimations are correct, by May, we could see another real strong push from the Kremlin. We
Okay.
could see another 500,000 men being pushed out onto the front lines.
Right.
And so it's going to be a matter of who can hold out. Is it
Hmm.
going to be the superior forces, or is it going to be the smaller numbers with better weaponry?
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. Which one's going to win in that war? And then Putin still has the nuclear option. I don't think it's something that's actually viable or something that's going to be brought to the table,
Right.
but it is an option on the table.
Right.
Um,
And see, I have to say that, I'm not a Trump fan. I didn't vote for Trump, but this wouldn't have happened under Trump. It just wouldn't have.
I
I
disagree.
don't think any of this would have happened.
I think I think it was inevitable. I think it was going to happen regardless of who was president. I don't
I
think Trump being president would have changed that,
mm-mm.
'cause what would Trump do?
No, Trump was
What would he
Trump.
do differently than Biden's doing right now?
There was a thing about Trump, and this is a quote, obviously from Putin himself, but he didn't know when Trump was being serious or not. There was this factor of Trump is crazy or deranged, and so when Trump said that if you do anything in the Donbass area, I will nuke the Kremlin. Putin kind of, he kind of chuckled at him, but he knew that even if Trump was
Like,
only
maybe
yeah,
he
that
would.
that 5% odd that Trump might
Would he?
actually do it. I do
Would
think
he?
I agree with you that it's inevitable, it was bound to happen, but I don't think that it would have happened under the Trump administration. They would have waited for Trump to exit his 8-year term, and then they would have gone for it.
Maybe. But like the strategist was saying, according to him, this was the time that it was going to happen no matter what. This is their last
Mhm,
chance before. That's another thing, is their population is decreasing. Their
mhm,
population, there is like far superior older 70, 80-year olds versus their younger generation isn't sustainable enough to move the country forward.
right.
This is their last push to keep their country alive. If they do not get Ukraine, we could very likely see it die down in 4 or 5 decades.
And it's interesting because I just saw something earlier
And
too,
if
and I
it
didn't.
does die down, what does that mean for China moving in? What does that mean for America moving in? What does that mean for Europe moving in? That, I believe, could be a world war if we see the fall of the Russian
Mhm.
government. What happens to the entire country of people? We're going to see
Yeah.
it's a power vacuum.
Yeah, yeah, immediately, and you're gonna have a whole lot of people that are fighting for it all at the same time. But I
Mhm.
did see a clip that was about China, as a matter of fact, and that China was going to practically collapse in like the next 10 years. Now, I didn't get a chance to look into that, but now that we're on that topic, I think I'm going to look into that for
Okay.
tomorrow's show. That way
Yeah,
we
we can
can look into
definitely do that.
that because and we can definitely dive a little bit deeper into this as well because this whole Russia thing is actually it really is a really big deal. We'll see
Yeah.
what happens with the news tomorrow though. Let's see. We got you want to talk about Trump or you want to talk about the debt ceiling?
Let's start with the debt ceiling because that's
Okay.
the more they were
All
actually
right.
talking about this. I didn't save a clip for it, but they were talking about this during the
Yep.
press briefing. And so Biden's stance and Jean-Pierre, their stance is essentially the debt ceiling
Raise the
needs to
ceiling.
be well, they said they said it needs to be a bipartisan decision that comes with no stipulations.
Infinite.
So
They want it to be
no,
infinite.
she made it clear that they have no goals right now, at least to eliminate the debt ceiling. That's not even a discussion that
Right.
is being discussed.
Not
Uh,
yet, but it was mentioned now.
yeah, so we're gonna read this. We're gonna go over this. The U.S. debt limit on Thursday is really being reviewed and it's being looked over. And what's going on is that the debt ceiling, it's really we're waiting to vote on it to see if we're going to raise it, to see if we're going to add to it. And it seems that Republicans are coming with some stipulations that I actually agree with.
Hmm.
And it actually shocked me that I agreed with it because it's this passage right here. The letter, excuse me, the letter is the beginning of what is expected to be a protracted and potentially dangerous economic fight. Republicans who assumed control of the House last week have insisted that any increase to the debt limit be accompanied by significant spending curbs, most likely including cuts both to the military and domestic issues.
Hmm. I have to say that
Why can't we do that? And why would Democrats fight against this?
because they
Why
want
would we?
infinite spending.
I I I just, and that's one thing that's always bothered me, is because I don't agree with any kind of infinite spending. I think that
Well,
we have all the money that we need from taxes already, that we can cut certain things like the military that we spend stupid amounts of money on.
mhm,
We can start at the very top with the fighter jets that are absolutely useless, and we can work our way all the way down to paying $20 for a freaking pencil.
right,
There is so much spending that can be cut out of the military budget.
mhm,
And yet now we have Democrats who are fighting against this because they say, no, we want to raise the debt ceiling and you can't add stipulations.
right,
If you do add stipulations, then you guys are the bad guys and you're holding up everything from getting what it needs to get
yep.
to.
And yet the whole time the Republicans right now are being called all kinds of pretty nasty names just because they don't want to vote on increasing the debt limit. And see, this is the issue, is that there is no middle ground. It is I no stipulations debt ceiling, or how about we make cuts somewhere else? And the Republicans are trying to come they're already compromising by saying they are willing to vote on it so long as the cuts are here.
Yeah,
That
so
is
they're even
already the
okay with
compromise.
raising they're okay with raising the debt ceiling. They just want to cut some stuff back so that next year maybe they won't have to raise the debt ceiling.
Yep.
And I don't like, Speaker Kevin McCarthy has cited reducing the national debt, which topped $31 trillion last year and has increased during both Republican and Democratic administrations, including about a 40% increase under former President Donald Trump, as a central focus of his party's agenda. Which actually, that's one reason that I was very disappointed
Right.
with Trump, is because he, obviously I knew it was BS when he was campaigning that it's going to be zero. I'm going to bring it down to zero. Like, no, no, you're not.
Mhm.
But I did think that he was going to bring it down, and he was like, "No, like we're just going to spend money. We're just going to blow
Mhm.
money, bro. Like we're just going to blow
Right.
it out." And a lot of this money was spent well before COVID was even an issue.
Mhm. And as soon as COVID hit, his entire project that he was working for there just completely got busted.
Yeah.
Just completely blown up, the entire economy, everything, the whole lockdown, 2 weeks to slow the curve.
Hmm.
Everyone will just get to herd immunity, and year after year after year, and here we are, XXB15. Let's go. We're going 3 years into this pandemic now, and yet we're being told both that the pandemic is here and the pandemic is gone, and
Yeah. In Texas, it's been gone for like 2 years.
yeah, this is true. This is absolutely true. But
um,
I have another issue with this, as a matter of fact, as well, is because Corinne Jean-Pierre had mentioned in her press conference that the economy was actually doing really well, and we could argue that according to their little
Over
piece
the
of
last
paper
6
there.
months, it has
Mm,
been doing better. It has dropped like 6%, where which is
mm,
it's good, or it's good. You know, it
I,
it, it
no, no, it's not though. That's the issue. Is that it used to be good. It got really bad, and then we came back a little bit. Now we want to say that it's good. This is not good. This is good. Where we started, this was good. We've got family in Arizona, unfortunately, and Arizona is getting, and that was a Republican
that's
state
actually
until.
that's the same argument I have about the crime rate. When
Mhm,
you 'cause remember that conversation, we'll actually have another conversation about this, but
okay,
bringing up the crime rate, like we were talking about the crime rate and how like crime's just out of control right now. At least
right,
that's a Republican talking point.
yeah,
But the thing about it, like crime is on the rise. It's definitely gone up. We have
right.
definitely seen an uptick in the last 4 years or so. But compare it to 1990 to now, and we see it go
Right,
tick, and it's like, oh, crime's horrible right now.
right.
I guess I could. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
because I mean, the gas prices the way that they are right now, a year ago we were dealing with what, like $4 per gallon here in Texas, and I think I haven't
They just
checked in the
dropped at
last week.
13 cents today.
Yeah. Yeah, but I
13
mean,
cents.
exactly. But I
It's
mean,
like two
what are
something.
we what we're paying now is still higher than what we were paying under the Trump administration. If you want me to call your economy good, then bring it back down to what it was prior to you entering office.
I don't, and I agree. I don't think it's good. I think it is improving,
It is. It sure,
but I don't think it's
yeah,
sustainable improvement. And
I
we're
don't think
talking.
it is.
We have some economists that are saying that we might see a point quarter
Yeah.
rise. So that's going to be bad.
I do think that the economy is going to likely get worse. My own personal opinion. I think that the economy is definitely going to take a crash here relatively soon, within the next year. I think groceries are still going to end up going up. We want to ban gas stoves because of this climate change thing, and I
No,
think
they
that they're
don't.
going to
They
push.
don't. We talked about that yesterday. They don't want to ban them.
Uh,
They're putting them under investigation to save
yeah,
children's lives.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. But I think we'll see. I think we'll see where it goes, because this debt limit thing, it honestly, it does get to me when the economy is the way that it is, and then our answer to that is, let's just spend and print more money and make it worse.
Yeah,
Like,
because
let's not
I'm
fix it.
curious.
Let's
Like
just
they're
ride the
talking
wave.
about raising the debt ceiling. What are they talking about raising the debt ceiling to?
Right.
Has a number even been
Well,
thrown out there yet?
there was a couple of people that were saying that they want the debt ceiling to be infinite.
That's
No debts,
ridiculous.
no debt ceiling ever for the rest of time, that they could just, the debt would, doesn't matter. And to a
What
child that
happens?
has,
What happens if we pay off our debt? Like, what if? What I know it's not actual debt. Like, what if our it's essentially a debt to income ratio? What
Mhm.
if we didn't have it anymore? Like, what if the debt was just like? What if we could make it to a point where like America's making money? You know what I mean? Instead
if
of just
we,
consistently saying, you know what, let's just keep borrowing more money from the American people. And the idea,
from the
and
reserve,
I know why I know why Democrats are so hell bent on being okay with this, is because the idea is that this extra money is going to come from rich people, which again, I have no problem taxing corporations. I say tax the shit out of corporations, but
mm-mm.
that's not what's going to happen. That's never what happens, because me and you don't actually have paid lobbyists to go and say, don't raise the taxes on Brian and John.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And that's
Yeah,
why I'm
I
so
think,
against it. And that's why I'm an anti-lobbyist. I don't like lobbyists. I think it's
right.
a horrible, shitty way to do
Well,
politics.
every single politician has a whole group of lobbyists behind them. Every single one of them. There might be a handful of them out there, maybe, but mm, every single one, every politician. Um, but I think that raising the tax or the debt limit, and
Speaking
and
of
you know,
speaking of shitty politicians.
okay. Oh, right, nice.
The
Bring
Trump
on the
Trump
orange guy.
organization has been fined $1.6 million after a conviction for 17 felonies, including tax fraud.
Okay.
That is a bad news
All right. So,
bears.
what are these 17 felonies?
I don't know the entire list of them. I know it just includes tax fraud and falsifying business records.
Okay.
Essentially, you're doing shady stuff.
Right.
Let's see what we got. Let's see if we can pull out a quote here.
Well, in
We
his presidential race, I think it was like 2015, Trump himself was saying that there was ways around,
Yeah,
having to pay taxes, and he said that, he's pointing to Hillary, and he's like, exactly what they are, because we both do it. He's like, I'd be stupid not to do it as a businessman. Then of course I'm going to try and get away from the taxes. And
mhm.
so, taxation is theft, but if we're going to have taxes, then it needs to be universal all the way across the board, no matter how much or how little your paycheck is. It should be universal.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like this is $1.6 million a slap on a wrist for him.
That's yeah.
But this is showing that,
He carries that in his pocket.
it's not Trump. Trump's not just like out here trying to help you out. Like if he can make tax cuts and skim a little bit off the top, he's obviously going to do it.
Right.
And that's why, I've never been a big fan of him. I don't like his business practices. I don't like the way
Mhm.
he conducts business. But at the same time, like to be somebody that has like Trump towers all over the freaking United States and trying to spread them all over the world,
Mhm.
like you got to be a little bit shady, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, is there
Right.
a rich person that is morally just and right that hasn't done something shady? I guarantee even Elon Musk has done some shady dealings to get
Right.
where he is. You know, I mean, if we want to talk about it, Elon Musk has the cobalt mines. You know,
Right.
that's essentially blood cobalt. You know, we want to
Yeah.
talk about blood diamonds and everything else. Like that cobalt is essentially blood cobalt. You get
I've
down
got a
to the
video for that.
there was actually Joe Rogan had a guy on who went undercover into the cobalt mines and got
That's the one.
that's the video got.
That's
Yeah,
the video.
I could not believe it, dude. I couldn't believe it. And it's just
Tens of thousands of people crammed into a tiny little mine digging by hands rather than having excavators. And according to their policies, procedures, and laws, that was not supposed to happen. There was not supposed to be a single person digging by hand. They were supposed to have machinery, operations, all kinds of stuff going on in order for them to be able to dig for that. And you see tens of thousands of people when they're squatted down digging in the dirt, man, their elbows are touching and just a sea of people just
Yep.
digging in this dirt so that way you and I can have a telephone.
and
This wonderful thing right here that we carry in our pockets is all because tens of thousands of people are digging in the dirt for you
not just
and
telephones, but
getting paid nothing.
electric cars and all of that other
Mhm.
stuff. All that,
Yeah,
like, if Elon Musk was the hero that he claims to be all the time, or
right.
you know whatever he claims to be himself, at the end of the day, like, I support his mission to Mars and all of that stuff, but you would stop all production of your electric cars if you actually cared about being morally right.
Right.
If you were the richest man alive who sits here and tries to portray himself as the fighter for freedom of speech, and you hate what the left is doing, then stop what you're doing right now. If we want to
Either
hold you up
that
on
or
the
just
high ground, stop doing it.
buy some caterpillars and put your people to work that way. Give them some
Yep.
machinery. Besides, you'd be able to do it 3 times quicker.
Yep.
3 times quicker with
Yep.
less manpower.
Yep. Less manpower. You could pay these guys a living wage. He has the
Mhm.
money to do it. Or he spent billions of dollars to buy Twitter. He could have used billions of dollars and made these people not slaves anymore.
Yeah, practically. All
That's
right.
crazy.
What do we have next? Actually, I think we have
Last story.
Ezra Miller.
Yeah, I felt like talking about him just because, I'm a
Okay.
comic fan. Flash movie's coming out soon. He's the star of it. But I really want to talk about, we talked a little about classism and stuff like that yesterday. And Ezra Miller 100% gets me on that subject because he is an individual who has made so much money, and now he literally has been assaulting people. In Vermont, he broke into somebody's house, stole a bunch of alcohol,
Hmm.
and got caught. And his charge for this, at one point in time, the max penalty was like 26 years for the what he did. But I think at the last they were talking about maybe doing 3 months. Um, Ezra Miller, referred to as they, them, avoided 3 months in jail and will now need to pay $500 in fines. And that is it. And a year of probation, and that is it. Well, that's not it. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. That's not it. There's like 40 different other things that he had to agree to include mental health, to include rehab, not drinking alcohol, all of these different things. My problem with this, which I think this is what we should be doing for the vast majority of people
For
that go to
everybody.
jail for things like this.
Rehabilitation.
Yes, the problem is you and I would
No,
never get this treatment.
no, no. We
We would
wouldn't.
never just get probation and a $500 fine. Guaranteed, first of all, that fine needs to be, I guarantee they can charge him more. They
Right.
downgraded it from felony burglary count and a petty larceny
Hmm.
to unlawful trespassing, a
Right.
misdemeanor. And I just think it's absolute garbage, man.
And
Even
he's
with he pled guilty, and it was a plea deal, but still, at the end of the day, if it were me and you, even if we pled guilty to this, we would
Right.
be facing $1,500 to $2,000 fine and at least 6 months in jail, and
Right.
we would probably go to jail. And you
Yep.
expect people that break into somebody's home to go to jail, regardless of their stature, regardless of their money.
Yeah. And
And
if we got probation, we'd be forced to actually do the probation, because I can almost guarantee he's going to
yeah,
be able to get
what
off
kind
of
of probation?
probation.
What kind of probation is that? Like, is
Right.
it just like mail-in probation? Like, I
Mhm.
actually had to do that before.
Like he could probably just pay somebody honestly and just be like, just write it down on the piece of paper. I did probation. Write out my hours, and then a $500 fine,
Yep.
like 500. You know, like you're talking about Ezra Miller. I'm not saying that he's Trump and he's got billions and
But
trillions of dollars.
he's done those, the what are the Harry Potter ones, the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Hmm.
He's the main villain in all of those. He's got a handful of indie movies that he's done. He's
Right.
been in the Justice League movie. Now he's about to be in the Flash movie. And that's another thing. Like, we want to talk about like cancel culture and stuff. I don't understand how we can live in a world of cancel culture and have Ezra
Yeah.
Miller do this, besides the fact that he happens to be non-binary and goes by they them.
Right.
That is the only thing that sets
That's
him
his.
different from other people that have been. I don't like using cancel because there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily canceled. They've just been shut down.
Right. I mean,
But
that is canceled.
there are certain individuals that have lost jobs and weren't able to work and so
Hmm.
on and so forth. Brendan Fraser is a prime example of that.
Right.
At least according to
Andrew
him,
Tate, as a matter of fact.
Andrew,
And Andrew Tate, as a matter of fact, got completely canceled. Every single
yeah,
social media account he had.
he deserves it though.
Whether he whether he deserves it or not, like
No, he legitimately deserves it, regardless. But maybe if he went by they them, it wouldn't be the case. But
if he
but
went by
then
they
again,
them,
and
he'd get out of it.
then again, if you went by they them, would you be a misogynist?
He can't be a misogynist because he's they them.
I don't.
He,
Does it work like that?
I I don't know. I mean, that's the thing though. You know, I don't believe in Andrew Tate. You know, I think that there's definitely a lot of things that he has a very strong message, and a lot of men that are looking lost need a place to channel that energy. And I think that Andrew Tate shows them how to channel that energy. But I don't think that Andrew Tate is that savior. I think that you can, you know, Jordan Peterson is a fantastic example of, you know, and then again, you know, he's another one right now that the left is completely demonizing, and he has to go through some kind of retraining of social media in order for them not to be able to cancel his
Yeah, we will
practice
cover it.
devices.
We will cover that later on because I
Yeah.
think that is absolutely. I am
Yeah.
not a fan of Jordan Peterson. I do think
Right.
if you watched, there's a movie called Don't Worry, Darling. It's actually one of
Hmm.
my favorite movies of last year. A lot of people didn't like it. Got a lot of criticism because they said that the main actor Chris Pine was essentially Jordan Peterson. He's like king of
Okay.
the incels. Um, and that's kind of, he's a hero to incels. He's like the spokesperson for them. He's there for them.
Right.
And
But what's wrong with what's
there's
wrong
not.
with that?
There's not. And I agree. There's nothing wrong with being there for incels and trying to make them better people.
Right.
I don't agree with the way that he does it because he involves religion in such a heavy way that
Right.
I think it's more indoctrination than anything else because you're taking
Well,
these weak-minded men that are
mhm.
vulnerable and demasculated, and you're trying to turn them into religious individuals, and that makes for religious zealots and extremists. And that is my concern when it comes to it. I have no doubt that Jordan Peterson is a brilliant man. I guarantee. I think some of his stuff is theatrics, like him crying on TV, talking about how he cares about these incels
Mhm.
so much. Like, bro, stop. Like,
Right.
I get
Well, I
that you
mean,
want to help them, but stop crying about them.
him as a clinical psychologist, I mean, I think that, you know, that's who he is, and for the longest time, he actually didn't bring religion into it at all.
Yeah, I know, but
For like 12
but
years,
he's
he didn't bring
very
religion into it.
heavy. And that's another. We're going to get on that discussion another time too. How Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Charlie
Right.
Kirk, Jordan Peterson are all
Mhm.
actively pushing this religious right wing narrative,
Mhm.
and how I think it's actually a pushback from the trans and everything else going on with the
Right.
culture wars that all started with just simply trying to get gay people to be allowed to be married.
Yeah.
Like it's
But I mean,
did you
cancel
actually
culture.
did you watch that gays against groomers Tim Pool one?
I didn't see that
It
one.
was actually interesting. It's a lesbian woman. She is a conservative.
Mhm.
She started an organization that's essentially with inside the LBGTQ community. Just saying that we're tired of this. We're tired,
Okay.
and they actually have trans people with inside their organization, that with
Mhm.
inside the gays against groomers, and that's one of the things I wanted to point out is just like we'll get to this on a bigger scope later, but it's not all Democrats. You know, it's
Right.
not all gay people. It's not all trans people.
Right.
These are small pockets of individuals across the United States
Mhm.
that, may make up 1 to 2% of the population. That's still a big number. 1 to
Right.
2% is still a relatively good number when we're talking about 330 million people.
Right.
And
Like
so,
the left today, the extreme left today is got the loudest voice, and therefore
yes,
they're the ones with the microphone screaming in, making sure that everybody can hear them. But in reality, they're a very small
yes.
percentage of what actually consists of the average American.
Because if you talk to individuals like Buck Angel, he had a
Mhm.
debate with Charlie Kirk that I thought was absolutely amazing. He was talking about transgenderism and all of
Mhm.
that other stuff, and he's an individual that the 80s and 90s, back when it wasn't any kind of social construct to doing it, or there was no social norms around it. It wasn't becoming
Mhm.
normalized in any way, shape, or form. In fact, he was often ostracized and treated poorly. But he explains how he went through years of therapy and went through many different doctors and could never figure out why he was so depressed all the time and just feeling
Mhm.
horrible. But he also said that this is gender dysphoria. I do have a mental illness, but
Mhm.
I am happy this way. Why would I want to change?
He's happy with, because he defined it himself as mental illness. He
Yeah.
himself defined gender dysphoria as a mental illness,
Yes.
and so
100%.
but that's the thing, is that he's happy with his quote unquote mental illness.
And then there are people in the community that will sit there and they will call him transphobic.
Right. Yeah.
You're talking. He's been transitioned for 30 something years, and you're gonna
Yeah.
have the nerve to call this man what? What?
Like, he wasn't the first person, there was a whole line of people before him, but
Yep.
in his modern age, he is, one of the pioneers of being trans, and yet
Yeah,
we're
because it
calling
was
him
completely
transphobic.
experimental. There
Mhm.
was literally like, let's poke you and prod you with this,
Yep.
and we're gonna see what happens. Like he even says in his interview or in his debate that he was a guinea pig. That
Yeah.
they didn't know what they were doing, but he had a doctor that was willing to work with him, and they made the transition, and he has never been happier. He couldn't imagine his life as a woman. In fact, he said the moment that he transitioned, his life has been better, and it has only gotten better throughout all of these years.
Right.
And so that is somebody that is truly a trans person.
Mhm.
And we are seeing flocks and flocks of people, especially children, that are saying that they're trans because it's a culture war issue. And so it's becoming this big giant thing. Children are hearing about it, they're talking about it. And you go to school now, you're not cool unless you're a lesbian. You're not cool unless you're bisexual. You're not cool unless you're a minority. And it's just getting out of hand when it comes to that aspect. Like we're
Right.
letting it influence our children too much. And this happened when we were kids. When we were coming up, like it was the bi girls, the girls that love to kiss girls. We saw them all the time. There was always those edgy
Yep.
girls that were like, "Do you want dare us to kiss?" And it's like, no, we don't dare you to kiss. Like, stop.
Right.
Now, of
Well, I
course we did.
mean,
We were 15-year
you
old boys. Of course we dared you to kiss.
right. Yes, this is
But yeah, that's another topic. We're gonna get way deep into that. Actually, I think we should have a good long debate on that. But we're coming up to our time. We keep on going 8 minutes over every time.
that yeah, I mean, I think that eventually we'll end up getting it longer. I think an hour is good for now, but eventually we'll probably end up stretching it up to 2 hours. But let's get into it first. But if you guys like the show, hit the like button. If you dislike the show, hit the dislike button. That's
No,
exactly what
don't
it's
hit
there
that way.
for.
Don't do that. We
Either
can't see it
way,
any. We can't see it anyway. They got
no
rid
one
of
can.
it.
But either way, hit the subscribe button so that way you guys come back next time. because there is always two different perspectives, two different points of view, one from the left and one from the right. There it is.
All right. Yep. Until next time, thank you guys for coming. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video. We will be back. I think we're gonna be doing what videos 5 days a week, something like that.
I think 5 days a week. We need to figure out what 2 days we want to take off, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
We'll figure it out.
But make sure you come back to the channel. We'll be dropping segments here in the near future, little clips here and there that you guys can share with your family and friends and boyfriends and girlfriends and trans friends and everybody else in between.
Yes, sir.
Woo!
All
right, guys.
Joe the alien.
All right. Later.